I ruined my dream wedding when I found out his terrible secret. Those words still echo in my head like a confession I can't take back. The moment I pressed play, my entire world cracked open, not with screams, not with tears, but with silence. Deafening, hollow silence. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. The white roses, the string quartet, the crystal chandelier that caught the sunlight like 1,000 tiny promises. 200 guests sat waiting for me to walk down the aisle, smiling, whispering about how perfect everything looked, how perfect we looked, and maybe that was the cruelest part. Because until that very morning, I still believed in perfect. I remember standing in the bridal suite, my hands trembling as I adjusted my veil. My best friend, Hazel, was fussing over my bouquet, chattering about how handsome John looked in his tux. "He can't stop smiling," she said. "You're so lucky, Eve." Lucky, that word hit me like a sting, even then. Because I already knew. I had known for less than 48 hours, long enough for the truth to fester. But not long enough to heal. 2 days earlier, my cousin Ben, one of John's groomsmen, had shown up at my door looking pale and sick. He'd been at John's bachelor party, and what he found there changed everything. He didn't say much, just handed me a flash drive. "You need to see this," he whispered. His voice broke halfway through the sentence, and when I watched that video, shaky, grainy, loud with laughter, my stomach turned to ice. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream. Because what I saw wasn't just betrayal. It was humiliation. It was my family. I remember dropping the laptop lid, shaking my head like I could erase what I'd seen. "No," I whispered, "that's not possible. That can't be her." But it was. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my living room floor, surrounded by wedding invitations, gifts, memories, all of it suddenly meaningless. Every "I love you" John had whispered, every motherly smile Zelda had given me. All of it had been a lie. I thought about canceling everything. Running away. Hiding. But then I realized something. They had lived their truth in the dark, and I had spent years pretending not to see the cracks. Maybe it was time to turn on the light. So I did what they never expected. I didn't cancel the wedding. I went through every step, the rehearsal dinner, the makeup trial, the final fittings, calm, polite, unreadable. I smiled for the photos. I said thank you to the florists. I even hugged Zelda when she handed me a cup of tea the night before, her hands trembling slightly. That morning, I arrived at the venue early. The air smelled like lilies and champagne. Everyone looked so beautiful, so happy. The planner came to me with a bright smile. "Are you ready, Evelyn?" "Yes," I said. "Let's play the video before I walk in." She blinked, confused. "The highlight reel? You sure? Usually we play it after the vows." "Trust me," I said softly. "This belongs at the beginning." And so, when the lights dimmed and the guests turned toward the screen, they didn't see a montage of our engagement photos, they saw something else. It started normally, a toast. Laughter, the sound of John's voice somewhere off-screen. Then came murmurs. Confusion. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through dry leaves. Someone gasped. "Wait, isn't that?" Another voice, sharper, "Oh my God, is that Zelda?" The murmuring grew louder. A woman in the front row covered her mouth. My father half rose from his seat, his face white as chalk. On the screen, movement, indistinct, intimate, unmistakable. And then silence. No one dared breathe. I stood at the entrance, hidden behind the doors, still in my gown. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears, but I didn't cry, not when I saw John's mother whisper something to her husband. Not when Zelda's friends turned to stare at her, their faces twisted in disbelief. Not even when John stumbled to his feet, shouting, "Turn it off. This isn't real. This is a mistake." Because for me, the heartbreak had already happened days ago. This was just the burial. I stepped forward, the train of my dress whispering against the marble floor. The room turned toward me, 100 eyes wide with shock. I stopped in front of the altar, looked at John, his face drained of color, sweat beating at his temples, and said the only words I had left: "The wedding is off. But thank you all for coming." Someone dropped a glass. It shattered on the floor, a sharp, perfect sound. Zelda covered her face with her hands, whispering, "Evelyn, please." But I didn't answer. I turned, lifted my veil, and walked straight out the door, the cold wind hitting my skin like freedom. Outside, the sky had turned gray, the kind of gray that comes before a storm. I remember standing there, the hem of my dress dragging through the gravel, my breath visible in the air. For 10 years, I had believed in fairy tales. That love conquers all, that families can heal, that people mean what they say. But in that moment, watching the rain begin to fall, I realized something simpler, and truer, sometimes. Destroying your perfect day is the only way to save the rest of your life. And as thunder rolled over the hills behind the venue, I whispered to myself, almost smiling through the ache, I ruined my dream wedding. But I saved myself. People always told me I was lucky. They said I had the kind of family that belonged in holiday commercials, the smiling father, the kind stepmother, the well-behaved younger sister, and a daughter who had it all together. I used to believe that too. After my mom passed away when I was 16. My world became a fog I couldn't see through. My dad tried his best, but grief made him quiet, half there. Then Zelda came along, soft-spoken, graceful. With the kind of warmth that filled the cold corners of our house. She used to braid my hair before school, help me pick out college applications, tell me stories about her childhood in Vermont. Loss, she once said, isn't the end of love. It's just love trying to find somewhere else to go. Back then, I thought she meant my mom. Now I realize maybe she meant herself. When Dad married her, I didn't resist. I was grateful. I told people I finally had a mother again. I meant it. For years, I introduced her proudly, this is my stepmom, Zelda, she's amazing. And for a long time, she really was. Every Thanksgiving, she cooked enough food for an army. Every Christmas, she made sure the tree glittered like something out of a magazine. She called me my girl, hugged me tight when I graduated college, cried when I moved into my first apartment. When I met John, she was the first person I told that he'd come into my life like sunshine through glass, warm, golden, flattering everything it touched. He was successful but humble, handsome but soft-spoken. My friends teased me, he's straight out of a movie, Eve. Maybe that's why I ignored the tiny red flags. The first time John came home for dinner, Zelda lit up like she'd known him forever. They talked about yoga, running, the same meditation retreats. My dad was just happy everyone was laughing again. It's nice to see this house full of joy, he said that night, raising his glass, and it really was. We became the family people envied. Weekend brunches, road trips, backyard barbecues, Zelda always hosting, John always helping. Sometimes I'd catch them laughing together in the kitchen, heads close, but I never thought anything of it. Why would I? She was like a mother to me. When John and I got engaged 2 years later, Zelda screamed louder than anyone. My baby's getting married. She cried, hugging me until my ribs hurt. She insisted on helping with every detail, dress shopping, cake tasting, floral arrangements. At the time, it felt like love. Now, it feels like choreography. Dad didn't notice much. He'd started working longer hours, distracted, trusting Zelda with everything. You two are lucky to have her, he said one night while fixing himself a drink. That woman can do anything. He wasn't wrong. Zelda could do anything, including pretending to be something she wasn't. Looking back, there were signs. Little moments that only make sense now, like the time I came home early from work and found John's car parked outside our house while I was still dating him. He said he'd come to drop off something for Zelda. Some yoga supplies. I thought it was sweet he cared about my family. Or the day Zelda gave me a strange look when I mentioned how I couldn't wait to start a family of my own. Her smile faltered for a second, then returned, tighter than before. You'd be a wonderful mother, she said softly. Some people just aren't ready for that kind of love. At the time, I thought she was talking about herself. Now I know she was talking about me. There was one night, about 6 months before the wedding, when John came home late, reeking of whiskey and guilt. I asked if something was wrong. He kissed my forehead and said, "You worry too much, Evelyn. You always do." And I believed him. Because when you love someone, you build your world on their words, not their actions. Zelda would sometimes tell me, men get scared before commitment. Don't push too hard. Let him come to you. It was advice that sounded wise at the time. Now it feels like manipulation. When I think back to the person I was then, organizing guest lists, trying on veils, writing vows, I almost want to reach through time and shake her. I want to tell her that perfection isn't peace, that family isn't always safe. That sometimes the people who hold your hand are the same ones sharpening the knife, but I didn't know any of that yet. I was 28. In love, and sure of my future. Zelda helped me zip up my wedding dress the day before the ceremony. She kissed my cheek and whispered, "You deserve all the happiness in the world." And I smiled through tears, thinking how lucky I was to have her. The irony still burns, because less than 48 hours later, I would be standing in front of 200 guests, veil over my face. Heart turned to stone, realizing that the two people I trusted most had been sharing secrets in the dark while I planned a wedding in the light. They said my family was perfect. But my perfect family wasn't real. It never was. 2 days before my wedding, I was floating. I'd spent the morning confirming the guest list, checking the flowers, and folding tiny name cards with Evelyn and John, printed in gold script. My apartment smelled like lilies and champagne. Everyone kept saying how calm I looked for a bride. If only they'd known. That afternoon, while I was sorting the last of the decorations, my cousin Ben showed up at my door. He was supposed to be at the rehearsal with the groomsmen, so I smiled and asked, "What are you doing here? Don't tell me the guys broke the sound system again." But Ben didn't smile back. His face was pale, almost green. He closed the door behind him and said quietly, "Eve, you need to see this." He handed me his phone. On the screen was a video, grainy, shaky, like it had been filmed secretly in a dimly lit bar. I recognized the voices immediately, John's groomsmen laughing, music blaring in the background, someone chanting his name. Then the camera turned, and I saw him, John, standing with a drink in hand. His tie undone, smiling like the world belonged to him. At first, it looked like any bachelor party clip, a bunch of guys having too much to drink, saying stupid things. But then the laughter shifted. There was a woman in the frame. Her back was to the camera, hair long, blonde, familiar. Someone off-screen whistled. "Man, she's gorgeous." "Who is that?" Another voice, John's voice, answered, low, cocky, too casual. I couldn't hear the exact words, but the tone made my stomach twist. The camera zoomed slightly, catching her profile for a split second, and that was all it took. The world tilted. I froze, staring at the image, the curve of her face, the way her hand brushed his chest. It couldn't be. It shouldn't be, but it was. Zelda. My stepmother. For a long time, I didn't breathe. My brain refused to connect the pieces. I must have whispered her name, because Ben said softly, I didn't believe it either. But it's her, Eve. Everyone at the party saw her leave with him. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. No, I said. That's impossible. She was in Napa that weekend for a yoga retreat. Ben looked at me with pity that felt worse than the truth. That's what John told you, right? He sat down across from me and lowered his voice. My buddy Jason was there. He filmed that clip because he thought something about it felt off. He said John bragged about knowing her for over a year. Said she wasn't just some random woman. I felt something inside me fracture, quietly, cleanly, like a bone breaking beneath skin. The next few hours passed in a blur. Ben stayed with me, trying to calm me down while I replayed the clip over and over until the sound became unbearable. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the phone twice. Every scene from the past year flashed through my mind like pieces of a cruel puzzle. The yoga sessions. The long hugs, the errands John ran for her. The text she'd hide when I walked into the room. The more I thought, the clearer it became. It wasn't new. It wasn't sudden. It had been there all along, in plain sight. When Ben finally left, I sat in silence for hours, staring at the wall. At some point, I realized I was still wearing my engagement ring. It felt heavy, poisonous. I pulled it off and set it on the counter. By midnight. I wasn't crying anymore. I was planning. The next morning, I drove to Zelda's house under the pretense of dropping off some last-minute wedding things. She greeted me in her yoga outfit, hair tied perfectly, pretending everything was normal. "Sweetheart," she said, kissing my cheek, "you're glowing. 2 more days." Her perfume, that same expensive vanilla scent, hit me like nausea. I smiled tightly. Yeah, 2 more days. When she went upstairs to grab something, I slipped into her study. It wasn't hard to find the evidence. She was careless, confident. On her desk was a hotel receipt from Santa Monica, dated the same weekend John had told me he was visiting his brother. 2 names. One room. I took a picture of it. My hands didn't even shake this time. Then I checked her iPad, left unlocked on the table. Messages flooded the screen, short, suggestive, some just initials and emojis, but the contact name was clear, J. Each line felt like a knife pressed into my skin. "Can't wait to see you again. You make me feel alive." She'll never know. When Zelda came back downstairs, I had already left. I sat in my car, engine running, staring at the trees outside the window. My reflection in the mirror didn't look like me anymore. It was someone colder, quieter. Someone who'd seen too much. That night, I called Ben. "I need your help," I said simply. He didn't ask questions. He just said, "Whatever you need, I'm in." We spent the next 24 hours collecting everything, copies of messages, receipts, call logs. Ben knew someone who worked at the venue and convinced them to let us access the presentation setup. By the time we were done, I had everything I needed, but it wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about truth. About standing in the same light they tried to hide from. When I went to bed that night, the house was silent. My wedding dress hung on the door, untouched. And the engagement ring still sat on the counter where I'd left it. I stared at it for a long time before whispering to myself, "You'll get your show, John. Just not the one you planned." And for the first time since seeing that video, I smiled. It wasn't happiness. It was clarity. The morning after I discovered everything, I woke up feeling strangely calm. The kind of calm that comes when you've cried so hard there's nothing left to break. The wedding was still scheduled for Saturday. 2 days. 2 days for everyone to keep believing in a love story that had already died. I stood in the kitchen, holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold, staring out the window. The world outside looked the same, blue sky, chirping birds, sun spilling across the counter, but it all felt unreal. Like a set from a movie I was no longer in. I kept replaying the same question in my head, what now? What did I do with the truth? What did I owe to myself, and to everyone who still thought we were the perfect couple. Canceling the wedding quietly would be easy. I could vanish, let them clean up the mess, and people would whisper about my breakdown. John and Zelda could twist the story however they wanted. They'd cry crocodile tears, and soon enough, everyone would feel sorry for them. No. That wasn't going to happen. If they built their world on lies, then I'd make sure it collapsed in front of an audience. By noon, I called Ben. Are you sure about this? He asked after I told him what I had in mind. Absolutely, I said. They wanted a wedding. I'll give them one. He was silent for a moment. Then, okay. What do you need? That was the beginning. We met at the empty reception hall that evening. Rows of white chairs faced the altar, covered in blush-colored ribbons. Fairy lights twinkled overhead, and the scent of roses hung thick in the air. It was beautiful, painfully so. I stood there for a long time, looking at the setup that was supposed to celebrate the happiest day of my life. Instead, it would become the stage for its funeral. Ben brought in his laptop and started connecting it to the projector system. Once the slideshow starts, he explained, it'll automatically play whatever file is in the queue. I'll make sure that video is next. I nodded. Good. Don't tell anyone. Not even Claire or Dad. He hesitated. Eve, your father's health, I know, I interrupted. But he deserves to see the truth too. Maybe not like this, but there's no other way. For a moment, Ben studied me, as if trying to see whether I still had a heart under all that steel. Then he just said, you've got more guts than anyone I know. I smiled faintly. It's not guts. It's clarity. The next day passed in slow motion. Zelda kept calling, chirping in her sugary tone, asking about the bridesmaids' dresses and the rehearsal dinner. Every time her name lit up on my phone, ball rose in my throat. I didn't answer. John texted me too. Can't wait to see you tomorrow, my beautiful bride. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, you won't have to wait long. That night, I went to my father's house. He was sitting in his study, reading through his speech for the ceremony. His eyes lit up when he saw me. You nervous? He teased. Tomorrow's the big day. I wanted to cry. Instead, I hugged him tighter than usual. Just, thank you for everything, Dad. He smiled, patting my back. You got your mother's strength, you know. No matter what life throws at you, you always land on your feet. If only he knew what was about to happen. When I returned home, I opened my closet. The white wedding dress hung there, shimmering softly in the lamplight. I reached out and ran my fingers across the fabric, the same fabric Zelda had helped me pick. The same dress she had insisted would make me glow. It suddenly felt tainted. I left it there, instead. I chose a simple ivory pantsuit, elegant, clean, and unapologetic. I didn't want to walk down the aisle pretending to be the innocent bride anymore. I wanted to walk in as the woman who knew everything before bed. I wrote a short note and slipped it into my clutch. The truth deserves witnesses. Just in case someone asked me why, Saturday morning arrived with cruel brightness. Reporters weren't there yet, but social media buzzed, friends posting pictures of the venue, captions like, can't wait to see this perfect couple tie the knot. Perfect. Right. I arrived early with Ben. He checked the system one last time, making sure the projector was ready. I could tell he was nervous. His hands trembled slightly when he passed me the remote. Are you sure you want to do this? He whispered. I looked at him, steady. I'm not ruining anything, Ben. They already did. Guests started to arrive soon after. Smiles everywhere, compliments about the decorations, hugs, laughter. I moved among them like a ghost, polite but distant. I caught Zelda near the front row, flawless as ever, in a lavender dress, her diamond earrings catching the light. When our eyes met, she smiled sweetly. Oh, darling, you look radiant. I smiled back, just as sweetly. You too, Zelda. Absolutely radiant. Her laughter tinkled like glass breaking. As the ceremony began, John stood at the altar, confident, charming, the man everyone adored. My father was beside him, proud and unsuspecting. The officiant welcomed everyone, thanked them for coming, and gestured toward the big screen behind the altar. Before we begin, he said. Evelyn wanted to share a little video, a look back at their journey together. That was my cue. I turned slightly toward the technician at the back end. Gave a subtle nod. The lights dimmed. Music started softly, our chosen song. Can't help falling in love. A few photos flickered on the screen, our first vacation, our engagement, a family dinner. Guests smiled, some even teared up. Then, the music glitched. The next image blurred. The laughter from the bachelor party filled the speakers' voices. Movement. A woman's silhouette, murmurs rippled through the audience. Someone whispered, wait. Isn't that? Then, louder, isn't that Zelda? Every head turned, and I just stood there, still, composed, watching the ruin unfold exactly as I'd planned. The room went utterly silent. The flickering screen showed a blurry clip. But it was clear enough, a hotel hallway, soft lighting. A familiar man's laugh echoing faintly through the speakers. John. My almost husband then. The camera tilted, catching a woman's reflection in the mirror across from the door. Long blonde hair. Silk robe. The audience began whispering, confused, then horrified. Wait. Is that Zelda? Someone muttered. Zelda froze in her seat, her smile, the same polite, perfect smile she always wore, vanished as if wiped off her face. Her eyes darted from the screen to me, and then to John, who looked like someone had ripped the ground out from under him. The footage cut again, stills of hotel receipts. Timestamps, 2 people entering a suite together. The same 2 people leaving hours later. A hand, John's, sliding across her back, gasps filled the air like gunfire. My father, sitting near the front, blinked rapidly as if he couldn't understand what he was seeing. Claire covered her mouth with both hands. John stumbled forward, shouting, "Turn it off. That's not what it looks like." But no one moved. The technician in the back just stared at me, waiting for a signal. I gave a small nod. Let it play. The final image filled the screen, a message from me. Some truths deserve to be seen, not just heard. Then the screen went black for a moment. The silence was deafening. Then the room erupted. What the hell? Oh my God, that's her stepmother. Is this real? Zelda stood abruptly, face pale, voice trembling. Evelyn, this is a mistake. Someone is trying to. Sit down, Zelda, I said softly. The tone of my voice must have startled her, because she froze mid-sentence. John turned toward me, desperation twisting his features. Eve, listen, I can explain. Explain what? I interrupted. Explain why you and my stepmother spent nights in a hotel while I was planning our wedding? He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His face turned red, his jaw clenched, his eyes darted toward the guests, coworkers, family, friends, all staring at him in disgust. Zelda tried again. I was just comforting him, Evelyn. You misunderstood. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Comforting him? That's what we're calling it now. Someone in the back snorted. The murmur spread like wildfire, shame, disbelief, judgment. My father rose shakily to his feet. Zelda, he said, voice shaking. Tell me this isn't true. She stepped toward him, reaching for his hand. Richard, please, he yanked his hand away. Don't you dare. His voice cracked, raw and broken. Then he swayed, his face drained of color. Claire rushed forward just as he collapsed into her arms. Dad. She screamed. Somebody call an ambulance. The room exploded into motion, chairs scraping, people shouting. I moved on instinct, kneeling beside him, trying to steady his breathing. The paramedics arrived within minutes. They carried him out, and I followed them halfway to the door before turning back. Zelda was crying now, real or fake, I couldn't tell anymore. John stood frozen at the altar, hands shaking, his perfect tuxedo rumpled and useless. As they wheeled my father out, I looked at both of them and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, the wedding is off. Thank you all for witnessing the truth. Then I turned and walked outside. The air was cool and sharp. The sound of sirens faded in the distance. My heart was pounding, but there was no regret, no fear, only an overwhelming sense of relief. Ben caught up with me in the parking lot. Eve, that was, holy hell. You actually did it. I managed a small smile. Yeah, I did. He hesitated. Are you okay? I thought about it. The last few weeks felt like a nightmare stitched together with heartbreak and betrayal. But now, standing in the fading afternoon light, I felt something else, peace, I think, I said slowly. I'm finally okay. The fallout came fast. By that evening, the video had already leaked online. Someone had recorded it on their phone and posted it with the caption, "Bride exposes cheating fiancé and stepmother at her own wedding." It went viral within hours, hundreds of thousands of views. Thousands of comments. Some called me a hero. Others called me cruel. I didn't care, because while everyone else argued about morality, I slept, deeply, dreamlessly, for the first time in months. When I woke up, my phone was overflowing with messages. John had called 23 times. Zelda, too. I blocked them both. Claire texted, Dad's stable. He asked for you. And, he knows. I stared at the message for a long time, then replied, I'll be there soon. Before leaving, I looked around my apartment. The bouquet, the dress, the invitations, all symbols of a future that never existed. I packed them into a box, sealed it shut, and wrote one word on top, done. At the hospital, my father lay pale but awake. He took my hand weakly and whispered, you did the right thing. Tears welled in my eyes, but I shook my head. I didn't do it for revenge, Dad. I just wanted the truth out. He squeezed my hand. That's exactly why it mattered. That night, I sat alone on my porch, watching the rain start to fall, light, steady, cleansing, for the first time in a long while. I didn't feel small or broken. I wasn't the betrayed daughter. I wasn't the humiliated bride. I was the woman who refused to stay silent. I whispered into the darkness, they took everything, my trust, my love, my family. But they'll never take my voice. And as the storm rolled in, I smiled, because for once, the thunder didn't scare me. For days after the wedding, the world seemed to hum with whispers. I couldn't walk into a cafe, a grocery store, or even scroll through my phone without hearing echoes of my own story, the wedding scandal that everyone suddenly had an opinion about. People stared. Some smiled, some pitied me, some whispered behind their hands. I didn't care. I'd already survived worse. My father was recovering slowly at home. Claire and I took turns staying with him. Every time I brought him tea or helped him walk to the porch, he'd say the same thing, you were brave, Eve. It hurt, but you did what needed to be done. Sometimes, I believed him. Other times, I just felt tired, as if every muscle in my body remembered the years of pretending everything was fine. 3 days after the wedding, John showed up at my apartment. I heard the knock, sharp, insistent. I opened the door just enough to see his face, pale, sleepless, desperate. Evelyn, please, can we talk? I crossed my arms. You have 10 seconds. He ran a hand through his hair, voice trembling. I lost everything, Eve. My job, my reputation. That video? It ruined me. You ruined yourself, I said coldly. I just turned on the lights. He winced. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I never wanted to hurt you, but you did, I interrupted. Every time you lit. Every time you smiled at me while you were with her. His eyes glistened. I loved you, Evelyn. I just got confused. That word, confused, made me laugh. A small, hollow laugh. You weren't confused, John. You were comfortable. He flinched, and for a moment, I saw the boyish charm he once had, the smile that used to melt me. But it was gone now, replaced by something hollow. Please, he whispered, can we at least start over? I stared at him for a long time, then shook my head. You can't start over with someone you buried alive. And then I shut the door to the following week. The news spread faster than wildfire. Someone had leaked the full footage, not just the wedding moment, but the receipts, the photos, even snippets from Zelda's diary. Within days, John was fired from his firm for ethical misconduct. His name trended online. Sandwiched between hashtags of mockery and outrage, Zelda disappeared. She drained my father's joint account, took jewelry that belonged to my late mother, and vanished. Claire filed a police report, but there wasn't much they could do. A week later, I got a text from an unknown number, you destroyed my life. I hope you're happy. I stared at it for a moment, then deleted it. At night, I often sat by my father's bedside. He slept lightly, mumbling in his dreams, sometimes calling my mother's name. I wished she were here, not to fix things, but to tell me I'd done enough. Claire came in one night, carrying 2 mugs of cocoa. She sat beside me and said, you know what people are saying online? I've stopped reading. Half of them think you're a legend. The other half think you're cruel. I smiled faintly. I can live with both. She nudged my shoulder. You always could. For the first time in weeks, I laughed, a real laugh. It felt strange and freeing. By the 3rd week, the shockwaves had started to fade. I returned to work, met clients, tried to resume some sense of normalcy. But I wasn't the same woman anymore. Something had shifted, a calm, quiet certainty that I no longer owed anyone silence. One afternoon, as I walked home, I passed a small bookstore and saw a quote written on the chalkboard outside. The truth will set you free, but first, it will shatter everything. I stopped. The words sank deep. Yes, that was it. The truth hadn't saved me gently, it had wrecked everything before rebuilding me, and I was okay with that. A month later, the police found Zelda in Arizona. She was living with a yoga instructor 10 years younger than her, hiding under a fake name. She'd lost everything, the money, the jewelry, the friends. When Claire told me, I didn't feel triumph. Just a quiet, settled kind of peace. John, on the other hand, was spiraling. He sent letters to my office, long, rambling ones filled with apologies and self-pity. I never opened them. He called once from a blocked number. I picked up only to say one thing, you taught me that sometimes love isn't blind, it's just ignoring the obvious. I won't make that mistake again. Then I hung up for good. As summer ended, I took a trip to the coast, alone. The sea breeze was cool, the horizon endless. I stood on the sand, toes buried in the wet earth, and let the wind tangle my hair. For the first time, I wasn't thinking about the past, or about who betrayed me. I was thinking about what came next, when the sun dipped low and the waves turned gold. I whispered to myself, they lied, they stole, they burned everything down. But I'm still here. And somehow, that was enough. That night, back at my small rental cabin, I opened my journal and wrote, maybe healing isn't about forgetting what they did. Maybe it's about remembering who I was before they broke me, and becoming her again. I closed the notebook and exhaled. The storm was finally quiet, and for the first time since that cursed wedding day, I slept with a smile. 6 months passed, the world had stopped whispering my name, and I finally liked the silence. The morning air in Santa Cruz was cool and soft, filled with the scent of salt and eucalyptus. I stood on the balcony of my small rented apartment, sipping coffee. Watching the ocean breathe beneath a pale sunrise. It was strange, how something as wild and endless as the sea could make you feel steady inside. Down below, my father was feeding the gulls. He'd moved closer after the divorce from Zelda. His hair had gone grayer, but his eyes were calmer now. Sometimes he'd still talk about her, not with bitterness, just disbelief. Like remembering a bad dream that somehow felt real. Claire visited every weekend, bringing homemade pastries and stories about her new job at the local paper. She'd written an article about emotional abuse and betrayal, inspired, she said, by a very brave sister. I didn't think of myself as brave. I just stopped pretending. A few weeks earlier, I had received a letter from the courthouse. Zelda's case had been closed. The jewelry was gone, the money unrecoverable, but she was forbidden from contacting my father or any of us again. When I read that, I didn't feel victory. Just closure, the quiet kind that doesn't need applause. John never wrote again. His last attempt was a long voicemail that began with "I'm sorry" and ended with silence. I deleted it without finishing. He had lost his job, his apartment, and from what I heard, most of his so-called friends. Some people pitied him. I didn't. He'd built his own cage, brick by brick, lie by lie. One afternoon, I drove back to the old family house, the one where I used to dream of wedding plans, holiday dinners, and forever. It was empty now. I walked through the front yard, where the magnolia tree still stood. My mother had planted it when I was 10. Zelda once wanted to cut it down because it blocked the light. I'd begged her not to. Now, the tree was taller than the house, its blossoms pale and fragrant. I smiled up at it and whispered, "You survived too." Inside, the air smelled of dust and memories. I found an old box tucked under the staircase, wedding invitations, photographs, pieces of the life that never was. I didn't cry. I just folded the paper neatly, placed it back in the box, and closed the lid. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was release. That evening, Claire joined me by the beach. We sat on the sand, our feet buried in the cold grains, the sky glowing orange and pink. "You ever think about her?" she asked quietly. "Zelda?" She nodded. "Sometimes," I admitted. Not the things she did, just the way she fooled everyone. How easy it was to believe her kindness. Claire sighed. "I used to hate her. Now I just feel sorry for her." I looked at the waves, endless and forgiving. "Yeah, me too." We sat in silence for a while, listening to the rhythm of the tide. The sea didn't care about broken promises or ruined weddings. It just kept moving, steady, inevitable, free. That night, back home, I opened my journal, the same one I'd started the week after the wedding. Its first page read, "Day 1 without pretending." Now, on the last page, I wrote, "Sometimes the truth needs witnesses. Not to humiliate, but to heal. Because silence protects the guilty, and shame belongs to those who lie, not to those who tell the truth." I closed the notebook gently and placed it on the table. In the months that followed, I learned small, quiet lessons, that peace doesn't come with revenge, it comes with release. That love, when it's real, doesn't ask you to shrink. And that no matter how broken you feel, there's always a version of you waiting on the other side, stronger, wiser, softer. I still walked by the ocean every morning. Sometimes I saw couples holding hands and felt a tiny ache. But it didn't hurt the same way anymore. It was just a reminder that I was still capable of feeling. One Sunday, as the sun rose over the horizon, my father joined me on the beach. He looked at me with that quiet pride that said everything words couldn't. He said, "Your mother would have been proud of you, Eve." I smiled at the water, blinking back tears. "I hope so." We stood there a long while, two survivors of the same storm. When he finally turned to go, I whispered to myself, "I used to dream of a perfect family. Now I just dream of peace." The waves rolled in, soft and steady. I stepped closer, feeling the foam curl around my ankles. The sky was wide open, the wind gentle, and the sound of the sea, endless. For the first time, I didn't feel broken. I didn't feel angry. I just felt free.